All right, we're going to check that hypothesis homework and review one last time on the hypothesis so that you will be ready for your quiz over the hypothesis tomorrow. All right, how will batting practice affect a player's batting average? The nice thing about all of these examples on your homework is that they give you your connector in the sentences. I think almost all of them do. So what are we changing on purpose? What are we testing? Well, we're going to be testing the batting practice. Okay, how much batting practice they do. So how are we going to know the effects? How are we going to know who wins? What are we going to measure or observe? Well, we're going to measure or observe how their batting average does afterwards. So writing that hypothesis, you just plug those things in and it might look something like this. If the amount of batting practice is related to, or you could have used this word, the effect that they gave you, affects batting average, there's our DV, then the more you practice, the higher your batting average. And then you could choose to add because practice makes perfect. All right, next one. How does the depth of the Lake of the Ozark affect its temperature? All right, so again, they've given you effect. You don't have to use this one, but it's an easy one to plug in. So what are we changing on purpose in this test? Well, we're going to test the different depths of the lake. Okay, so the depths of the lake. And at each depth, what are we going to measure or observe? Well, we're going to observe or measure their temperature. Okay? Their temperature. So your hypothesis may look something like this. And by the way, this is a picture of Lake of the Ozarks. If the depth of the Lake of the Ozark is related to or affects temperature, there's our DV, temperature, then the deeper the reading, the colder the temperature. And then you could add your because statement, because the deeper you go, the less light to affect its temperature. All right. How does advertising for Can Collection Week affect the number of cans collected? Okay, so what are we testing? Well, we're going to test advertising or not advertising or only a little advertising. Okay, so the amount of advertising done. And what are we going to observe, or what effects are we looking for? Well, we're looking for the number of cans that are going to be collected. Okay, so we put these together, we plug them in our format, and you would probably get something like this. If the amount of advertising is related to the amount of canned goods collected, then the more you advertise, the more you will collect. All right, next one. How does the size of a paper towel affect the amount of water it can hold? Okay, and for those of you that are science savvy, you're going, aha, is this surface area and absorbency all put together? All right, so what are we changing on purpose? Well, that's going to be the size of the paper towel. Okay, whether it's the half size, the full size, or maybe the extra wide size. And we want to see how it's going to affect and measure the amount of water it can hold. Okay, so amount of water that paper towel can hold. So maybe your hypothesis will look something like this. If the size of the paper towel is related to how much water it can hold, then the larger the towel, the more water it will hold. All right, does fertilizer affect the growth of a plant? And I think we've actually used this example in class before, but let's go ahead and do this again. So we're going to talk about, or we're changing on purpose, fertilizer or no fertilizer or a tiny amount of fertilizer. And then we're going to check to see and watch and observe the growth of the plant. So the amounts of fertilizer and plant growth. So maybe your hypothesis looks something like this. If the amount of fertilizer used is related to plant growth, then the more fertilizer you use, the larger the plant will grow. All right. Excuse me. Does the volume of a container affect how quickly water will evaporate from it? So this time we're going to change different volumes of containers, okay? And what we're going to test, or what we're going to observe, is how quickly the water evaporates, okay? The amount of water evaporated. So your hypothesis may look something like this. If the size of the container affects the amount of evaporation produced, then the larger the container, the more evaporation is produced.